Good morning, church. I'm so pleased to let you know that our Honduras team got home safely, I think, early this morning. Yes, so hopefully they're all sleeping it off in their beds. We're excited to hear more about their trip and the week that they just had. But this morning, as hopefully they slumber, I'm excited to be here and bring the message. So let's continue in our motion sickness series. Without intentional formation, I am one of two people when I am left alone to my own devices: a hyperactive productivity machine or a couch goblin, neither of which is a great choice. Now, on the one hand, my mind doesn't turn off. I multitask, I exhaust myself in a quest to complete work that can never actually be completed. And this version of me has succumbed to panic attacks and to doom spirals. It's not a good look. Behind door number 2, I trade a doom spiral for a doom scroll. I might spend half a day in comfy clothes, mindlessly doing easy, time-wasting activities in the name of self-care and of introversion. But at the end of the day, I feel no more rested and no more settled than I did at the start of the day. Are you familiar with these choices? In neither of these scenarios am I actually aware of myself. I am numbed or distracted or overstimulated. In week 1 of our motion sickness series, Rob diagnosed an illness within us. We seemed cursed to hurry, to fill our hands and our minds and our lives, to take that metaphor of a cup runneth over and misapply it and fill it with noise and to-do lists and projects and errands and activities and commitments and overstimulation and overprogramming. It's like living life stuck on a tilt-a-whirl, just like along for the ride. The hurry of life is, for much of our culture today, just not sustainable. And it does harm to our very souls. You see, the faster that we spin, the less possible it is for us to intentionally and healthily connect to God, to others, and to ourselves. And we focus today on our interior life, us and our souls. I want to make the claim that motion sickness that we experience in our lives today, it separates us from our very selves. And that to regain ourselves, we must slow down our pace. The state of our self is critically and intrinsically linked to our spirituality, to our relationship to God and to others. And so let's try to go a little slower today. Let's take a deep breath. The hurried pace that we maintain does something inside of us. It dampens us and makes us less aware of ourselves. We struggle today to truly know ourselves. And you could say maybe this is a new problem based on the way of the world and technology. But this is not a recent problem. In Augustine's Confessions, which he wrote in the year 400, he reflects, how can you draw close to God when you are far from your own self? He prayed this prayer, grant, Lord, that I may know myself so that I may know thee. St. Teresa of Avila claimed that almost all problems in the spiritual life stem from a lack of self-knowledge. This is not a new problem. And so how do we come to know ourselves, if that's the problem? It doesn't happen at a breakneck speed, I can tell you that. We must create space to see what emerges. The ancient practices of solitude, of silence, and of stillness have circulated back into popular culture today. All of these require a slowing. And there's really, honestly, something significant to them. We see these practices in the way that Jesus modeled life for his disciples and for us. Jesus routinely found clarity and peace and rest by slowing and spending time in solitude. The word is the eremos. The gospel translates this a variety of ways for us: lonely places, desolate places, the desert, the wilderness. Henri Nouwen claims that without solitude, it is virtually impossible, he says, to live a spiritual life, which is haunting. In Mark 1, verse 35, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, he left the house, he went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Jesus does this all the time. There are dozens of examples I could give you to get away, to seek union with God, and a large part of this was sharing himself with God. Jesus uses this time to reflect on his emotions, to share them with the Father. He got clarity on decision-making. He went away before he called the 12 disciples. He prepared himself for hard things. He went away before his arrest. He'd have days, too, of solitary time traveling from place to place. And about after every miracle crowd story that you see in the Gospels, you will notice a line hidden here or there about Jesus sneaking off to rest, away from the hustle. It was part of his regular routine. A year ago now, our church leadership granted me the amazing gift of a 5-week sabbatical. So this time last year, I was off on sabbatical, and I was super eager to experience the presence of God uninterrupted, to embrace spiritual practices and silence and solitude, practice the fun ones like rest and celebration. But when I got away from it all, I am a little disappointed to tell you that I was still myself. I was a little rushed, a little hazardous, a little chaotic. My sabbatical left me awakened to a dreaded realization that I had become an anxious person, unable to quiet my inner life, experiencing the toll that motion sickness can take on the soul, the personhood itself. See, my anxious tendencies were really easy to explain in seasons of fullness or of stress or of hurry. It took stepping out of the pace and the routine for me to identify that the problem was not the external, but the internal work that needed my attention. How do we come to know ourselves? And do we want to know ourselves? I'm going to do just a secret poll in your seats. When talking about interior work, how many of you might be getting a little nervous? Most people, it seems, are afraid to be alone with themselves. We have grown comfortable with noise. It's like a security blanket. The radio in the car, the TV in the background, always having plans. What are we afraid of? Of our value coming into question? Of our thoughts being toxic? Of our emotions being overwhelming? Philosopher Dallas Willard describes it like this. He says, silence is frightening because it strips us as nothing else does, throwing us upon the stark realities of our life. It reminds us of death, which will cut us off from this world and leave only us and God. And so for you, is it frightening to think of being left alone with God? Or to be left alone with yourself? Many of us, I think, might be in one of two lanes this morning in our quest to know ourselves. Those who do not know how to slow down internally to quiet the noise, and those who just don't want to. Maybe you're neither. Maybe you're both. There's lots that you could get out of this morning. Becoming unhurried internally starts with becoming unhurried externally. I cannot jog into a prayer meeting, flip a switch, and become a calm and reflective person while I am still panting from climbing the stairs. There's this adage that says, if you think everybody hates you, take a nap. If you hate everybody, eat something. And if you hate yourself, take a shower. And there's something to that advice. Our interior life is connected to our exterior state. If you have an emotional need, sometimes part of the solution is physical. The first question, are your basic needs being met? Are you taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually? There's this story found in 1 Kings 19 about God's prophet Elijah. Some background for you. At this point in 1 Kings 19, Elijah had been through it. The prophets of God are being hunted down and killed. The queen, evil. And Elijah just embarrassed 850 prophets of these false gods in this special spectacle, complete with fire raining down from heaven that declares the sovereignty of the one true God. It was awesome. It was one of those crazy Old Testament stories they write children's books about. But this guy is scared and tired, emotionally and physically, and so he takes it upon himself, God does not tell him to do this, to bail, to go off grid. Verse 3, Elijah was afraid and he ran for his life. And when he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord." He said, "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." And then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank, and he lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat. The journey is too much for you." And so he got up and he ate and he drank. In this short little passage, Elijah sits down under a bush, and his whole reality is in despair. He is suicidal. He wants to die. An angel of the Lord shows up, and he tells him how good he's got it and to stop complaining. No, that's not what happens. An angel of the Lord walks up, and he begins reasoning with Elijah about how powerful God is compared to the enemies pursuing him, and he just needs to have faith and be a little more positive. Focus on the good. That's also not what happens. A representative of God shows up. He sees Elijah exhausted and despondent, and he acknowledges it. And he gives him something to eat, and he lets him get some rest in a safe space. I love this moment because it is so simple, and it is so full of some non-judgmental compassion. This angel is like, "Man, you have some real stuff you need to work through with God, but to get there, we're going to need to get some of your needs met. The journey is too much for you." Elijah was burnt out, he was thirsty, he was tired and hungry, and he wasn't thinking clearly. I think sometimes believers get the impression that God doesn't care about the physical stuff, like if we're struggling to get enough sleep, or our bodies hurt, or we're so hungry that we feel dizzy. That it's less holy or somehow divorced from our spirituality. But our physical conditions and our spiritual and emotional conditions are connected. We then are responsible to be aware of and to respond to them. And if we're running at top speed, these basic needs sometimes are the first things to fall by the wayside. Now, I might just be talking to like moms, nurses, and college students in the room right now, but have you ever done that thing where you forget to eat? You're just bouncing from one thing to the next at work or at home or the errands list, and you never slow down. And there's a point in the day when you realize you're having a hard time with brain fog, and you're starting to feel a little shaky. And you realize that man does not live on iced coffee alone. And I didn't notice I was starting to get more irritable and feel stressed about minor things and unable to focus. But I think if I had eaten like an egg 3 hours ago, all of this would have been taken care of. When we are slow enough to be physically present, we are aware of ourselves. And then we are aware of our warning signs, and we can maintain ourselves properly. Our bodies, our minds, our emotions, these are things God has given us to steward. We can become responsive rather than reactive. We can cultivate a non-anxiousness in our souls. Peace. Consider this internal exercise from your seat. Can you identify now how your body is feeling? Do you need to unclench your jaw right now? Do you need to drop and roll your shoulders? You need to sit up a little straighter? I'm seeing some movement. Take a very slow, deep breath with me. I will count for us. Can you inhale? 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. What are you feeling right now? What emotions have you felt today? Are you aware of them? If prayer stresses you out because you don't know how to sit still or where to start there. Slow down enough to tell God how you're feeling. When we intentionally choose self-awareness, we can choose how to respond to the stimuli around us rather than reacting to it, with the physical and with the mental and the emotional. What is the emotion? Why is the emotion? What do I want to do with this emotion? It has been 20 years and some since I was in my middle school science class on the day we did the sulfuric acid experiment, but I remember quite a bit of it. I remember we went outside because there was a smell to it. I remember sitting in small groups on the concrete, following instructions to pour the chemical compounds together and stir gently to witness the correct reaction. The materials changed color and size and substance. They turned into this rapidly growing brown solid shooting out of the test tubes, overflowing onto the tray below. And then I remember being in line to go inside when another classmate noticed something wrong with my face. And I remember when my science teacher's eyes widened and she rushed me inside because I didn't notice the acid had spilled on my face and my skin was rapidly burning off at my jawline. I remember spending the lunch hour with my head under the sink, flushing acid out of my skin. But mostly I remember the horror of not feeling the acid as it did its damage. It sounds preposterous, right? To not notice your face is burning off, to not notice that you are being eaten alive. But how many of us live our daily lives unaware of the ways that we are being consumed? Unaware of our bodies, the ways that we are being deformed and divorced from our emotions, unaware of the impact they have on our perception of the world, of God, of ourselves, and our response to it. Let's talk about emotions specifically for a moment in our quest to slow so that we might come to know ourselves. Remember, this is what we're trying to do today. For most of my adult life, I have had to learn and practice feeling my feelings. To not do this is to let yourself react to the world around you rather than respond to it. To be surprised by anger or sadness or fear, unaware that it had been bubbling up within you. Reactivity is not of Jesus. When we feel our feelings, we can begin to understand them, what they mean, what caused them, what they're telling us about ourselves, and we can decide what we want to do with them. But historically, the American church hasn't done the best at seeing the emotional life for what it is. We saddle our feelings in with the flesh, that it causes us to stumble, it distracts us from the piety of our spiritual lives. Pete Scazzero, he's the emotionally healthy spirituality guy. He's an author and a pastor. He describes this experience for himself well into adulthood. He said, "It never entered my mind that God might be speaking to me in the feelings realm in a way that didn't compromise his truth. How could I listen to my desires, dreams, likes, and dislikes? Wouldn't they potentially take me the way of rebellion away from God?" So I ignored them. But they didn't go away. Instead, they began emerging in these reactive, unhealthy ways. And so Pete proclaims that the journey of genuine transformation to emotionally healthy spirituality began with a commitment to allow himself to feel. It is an essential part of our humanity, he says, and a unique personhood, and our unique personhood as men and women made in God's image. Our emotions are essential in navigating our world, our experiences, our relationship to God and to others, our understanding of ourselves. It is a great gift to be able to bring our emotions freely without shame to God, because we have a God who cares about us. Beyond separating from our emotions, consciously or not, a lot of us spend concerted energy avoiding being with our true selves. So we are unable then to know ourselves. When our view and value of self is rooted in something like our past experiences and our decisions, and what we do and what we produce, or in others' opinions of us, we will not slow down. And we will not see and know ourselves for who we actually are. Rather, we hide behind this concept called the false self. Our view of ourselves might be held by our past experiences and decisions. And you might say, you know what? Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe you don't want to see that. And we mask and we hide. And we let stories we tell ourselves hold us in shame. And if we were to be honest, those who struggle to be alone with ourselves, who want to be self-aware but are afraid to open the box, and then they hurry and they busy themselves with emotions and experiences of other people instead. Because focusing on goal orientation, on trying to cover up the hole of shame with activity and commitments, makes them feel good or worthwhile. These folks avoid the quiet and fill mind and body with noise instead, because noise is more comfortable than silence. Silence, slowing down, might mean being left without distraction and alone with your own thoughts. And for some people, that's really scary. Now, our view of ourselves might come from what we do or what we produce. So slowing down might feel impossible because it challenges our view of ourselves. We might think we're only worth loving or knowing if we are cleaned up, successful, seem put together, or generous, or kind, or strong, important. Everybody else's savior or caregiver or role model. Involved in everything that's asked of us. See, good things can become a barrier to slowing so we might come to know ourselves. They put an unnecessary, unreal pressure on us to be and do all things for all people. So we instead must learn what is ours to own and what is not. Sometimes we don't have enough time to do it all because it isn't all ours to do. Or because it doesn't all need to be done. Slowing might mean confronting who we are without the titles. Wife, mother, pastor, and deciding whether or not that means anything. Our view of ourselves also can be influenced by others. We conform to please those around us, to earn love or respect, or to avoid conflict or keep the peace. The healthy opposite, though, of conformity is called differentiation. The healthy, this is a psychological term developed by Murray Bowen. He founded the modern family systems theory in counseling. And basically, differentiation involves the ability to hold on to who you are and who you are not. The degree to which you are able to affirm your distinct value and goals apart from the pressures around you, but also remaining close to people important to you, helps to determine what your level of differentiation is. Pete Scazzero made his own version of Bowen's differentiation chart, and these are a few examples. If we have low differentiation, we can't distinguish between fact and feeling, or we spend a lot of life energy in winning other people's approval. If, it's low, but toward the medium here, 25 to 50, we're making poor decisions due to inability to think clearly under stress. We're seeking power and honor and knowledge and love from others to clothe our false selves. In the next category, getting closer to that healthy level of differentiation, we're aware of the thinking and feelings, functioning together as a team. These are not at war with each other. We can state beliefs calmly without putting others down. We can stay in relational connection with others without insisting that they see the world the same way that we do. And then the 75 to 100, which they claim few people are in this level of differentiation, secure in who they are, unaffected by criticism or praise, can hear and evaluate beliefs of others, discarding old beliefs in favor of new ones, able to maintain a non-anxious presence in the midst of stress and pressure. And so there's a little bit of a self-assessment to be done. How comfortable am I in this realm? We must slow down to know who we are outside of our relationships, outside of our environment, outside of our stressors. So outside of all of those things, our past experiences, production, output, others' views, where do we find our true selves? In Romans 12, Paul urges us to evaluate ourselves with sober judgment. In Psalm 139, David invites God to do this. He says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting." Would this be utterly terrifying to you? There are things that we don't want to see, that we don't want to know, and we don't want to confront. But Scazzero says, "I truly believe the greatest gift we can give the world is our true selves, living in loving union with God." He goes on, in fact, how can we affirm other people's unique identities when we don't affirm our own? Can we really love our neighbor well without loving ourselves? Our view of ourselves should be sourced from God's view of who we are. We are created in the image of God. No matter what you have been through, what you have done, what has been done to you, what falsehoods you have been told that you carry with you still, if you are one with Christ, you have been made holy. Part of the freedom of the gospel of Jesus Christ is that he's made you beautiful. And God says that you are precious and beloved and someone worth knowing, in spite of our pasts, without earning it, and regardless of popular opinion. Romans 5, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this: we were still sinners. Christ died for us. In the Message version of Romans 8, Paul says, "I am absolutely convinced that nothing Nothing living or dead, angelic or demonic, today or tomorrow, highs or lows, thinkable, unthinkable, absolutely nothing can get between us and God's love, because Jesus has embraced us. And 1 John 3 proclaims, see what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and we are. When it comes down to it, we think we know better than God, at least about us. We care a lot more about what we think than what God thinks. Now, hear me out. Don't want to create defensiveness in people, but what I've noticed is frequently we find a way to justify actions that we agree with that God does not, and we also find ways to ignore or not accept the gifts and the gifts that God gives and the way that God sees us. Like our view of ourselves holds more value than God's view of ourselves. Are you tracking with me? The number of people I've talked to who have a cognitive understanding of grace and mercy, but an inability to receive it and believe it for themselves is a tragedy. We are not comfortable with the way that God views us because it has nothing to do with what we've earned or what we've done, for good or for ill. A slowing within ourselves provides space to challenge this, to know and accept who we are, to receive rest and grace, to process our experiences and emotions, to choose who and what is forming us and who and what we want to become. We must slow down to identify our blind spots. We must slow to become aware of ourselves. We must slow to enjoy and appreciate who God made us to be. We must slow to be comfortable in our own skin and in the world around us. We must slow to break strongholds of sin and trauma in our lives. We must slow to identify and challenge negative and false beliefs about ourselves, about others, and about God that we're holding on to. We must slow to heal our wounds. We must slow to experience the easy burden and light yoke that Jesus offers. Rob started our series with Matthew 11, verses 28 through 30. Jesus issues us an invitation. He says, come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. A yoke was a common idiom for how a rabbi in Jesus' day were to read the Torah, the books of the law. It's the rabbi's teaching on how to be a human. Obviously, it is also a farming metaphor. A yoke is how an animal, horses or donkeys or mules or oxen, shoulder the load of the equipment. Two draft animals are paired up to work together to pull a load. All rabbis had a yoke. The difference is that Jesus' yoke was easy, which is good news, honestly, but maybe not what we were expecting from verse 28. The invitation is to all who are weary and burdened to find rest. Awesome. A break, a vacation. But in verse 29, he immediately offers us instead a yoke. Work? I wanted to be a couch goblin. But Jesus says, you need way more than a break. You are weary and burdened and in need of rest, to reconnect with me and with your own soul. And a vacation is not going to fix that if you are going to go and resume life exactly as it was before. Instead, I intend to give you a new way to live. Pair up with me, walk at my pace, and I will pull the weight. This is Jesus' invitation to us. Because I am gentle and humble in heart, or lowly. In all the Gospels, this is the only passage describing the heart of Jesus. Dane Ortland unpacks this in his book, Gentle and Lowly. And as we finish our time together and we approach the communion table this morning, listen to the description of Jesus, the one who invites us to this table. Meek, humble, gentle. Jesus is not trigger happy, not harsh, reactionary, easily exasperated. He is the most understanding person in the universe. The posture most natural to him is not a pointed finger, but open arms. and lowly. The point in saying Jesus is lowly is that he is accessible. For all his glory and dazzling holiness, his supreme uniqueness and otherness, no one in human history has ever been more approachable than Jesus Christ. No prerequisites, no hoops to jump through. The minimum bar to be enfolded into the embrace of Jesus is simply open yourself up to him. There is no room for hurry or for shame at the communion table. As we remember Jesus' death on the cross and the resurrection from the dead, the lengths he went to bring us back to himself and to provide us a way to God, I invite you to take a minute, open yourself up before him. When you are ready, take the bread, representing Jesus' body, and the cup, representing his blood. Let me give you a minute to do that, and then I will pray for us. All that is left is to say, thank you, Jesus. Grant, Lord, that I may know myself, that I may know you. Amen.